There have been several new radios released in 2025 that include extra receive bands in the shortwave, medium wave, and long wave bands. The Retevis A3 is one such radio. In this video, we'll take a look at the Retevis new A3 radio. Retevis sent me an A3 a couple of months ago to get a feel for the radio and to do this review. They don't dictate what I say, and my opinions are my own. They did send a link I'll have in the description below the video that will take you to their sales page on Amazon. The A3 is a pretty complicated radio, so this review will hit just the main points and features without going into too much detail. In this case, complicated is not necessarily a bad thing. It just means there are lots of features and variables you can control to both customize and get the most from your radio. The good news is that the A3 is very similar to the TK11 radio. That means most of the YouTube videos that do a deep dive into various aspects of that radio will apply to the A3 as well. It can be set to decode AM, single sideband, FM, and AM in the airband frequencies. It can also receive NOAA weather channels. As I've played with this feature, I discovered if you set the radio to SAME or specific area message encoding, the weather channels don't come over the speaker unless they are coded for the areas and events you've specified. It's probably worth your time to visit the National Weather Service website to learn more about SAME. It's a pretty cool technology. As with many ham HTs, it has 999 programmable channels and a large 2500 milliamp hour battery. The A3 also has a spectrum analyzer display that will show a graph of signals in the frequency range you've set. As with other radios, the A3 has a hidden menu where additional frequencies can be unlocked. To access that menu, press PTT number 1 and the top side key while turning the radio on. This opens up menu group 11, which includes 17 additional variables. Like I said earlier, the A3 is a fairly complicated radio. The last thing I'll mention in this abbreviated list is the LCD screen. This style screen makes the A3 easy to see even in the brightest sunlight. The backlight can be turned off or on for a user-specified time. In the upcoming video clip, I've got the backlight off as my camera struggles when the screen is illuminated. That's not the case with the old Mark I eyeball, though. Whether illuminated or not, it's easy to see. Before we jump into the tours and tests, please click the like button for this video and subscribe to the Gadget Talk channel if you haven't already. Additionally, please feel free to comment on your impressions or experiences with the A3. Now, on with the review. In this video clip, we'll take a look at what comes with the radio. So here's the box that the A3 comes in. Let's take a look at what we find inside. First, let's look at the A3 user manual. And this user manual is brief, as in most of the cases. It covers most of the important things. It's got diagrams for where the buttons are and what they do. It's got a very extensive list of the various icons here and so forth. And one of the charts that's interesting here is that if we go in here, we can see that here are the various menu items. There are explanations on how to use those menu items. And then this particular menu item here lists through, it's part of the scanning menu, and it lists through all of the subsections that the radio is divided in terms of bands. And so, VFO mode band, and then the frequency here, 1.8 to 18 megahertz, and then 18 to 32 and 32 to 76. All that is listed here. First, in terms of charging the radio, it comes with a desktop charger. It's wired in here with a USB-A on this side, and then it comes with an adapter or a wall wart to come in. Now, the radio can be charged directly into the battery with an A to C or a C to C USB cable, but it doesn't come with that. So that's charging through the desktop charger. Now, the radio comes with an interesting lanyard. Instead of a small rope woven type lanyard, this one is more of a ribbon cable, and then it can be detached here, and then it's got just a very narrow string or cord that you would put through the hole on the radio. So it comes off like that and then snaps back on. So you could leave this on without having the lanyard drooping around the radio. And then, of course, it has a belt clip. Unlike some radios, this belt clip comes with a sturdy spring, but it also clips into the back of the radio, as we'll see in a minute, as opposed to screws in. Now, the radio comes with a couple of different accessory kits. The one I'm showing you is with an extra antenna and then with a programming cable. And this is a Retevis branded programming cable with the K1 connector on one and then the USB-A on the other with the programming chip there embedded in that large handle. So it comes with 3 antennas. This is the primary antenna for 2 meters, 70 centimeters. It's got probably a coil embedded up here in this part of the antenna, and you're going to use this for those VHF and UHF frequencies. It's got an SMA female connector here, and then the frequency coverage is listed here in the antenna, as with most of them. And this one starts out at 50 megahertz, so it's going to be your 6-meter antenna as well. This one is just a little, a metal ferrite type antenna. It plugs into the hole that I'll show you in a minute. This would be used for some of your HF receiving. It does okay. These little radios are often not the best with this kind of an antenna. The complaint on these is that it has a 3.5 millimeter plug as opposed to some other type of connection. But with an adapter, you can connect it to a long wire or any of a number of other antennas to make receiving in the HF bands better. And now the third antenna is one for the lower frequencies. This one, as you can see, it's bigger. It's got a telescopic antenna here that comes in and out. And this is going to be for like 10 meters and 11 meters. You get down in the CB bands. It's called a Retevis HA07 antenna. And this one screws into the same antenna that the port on the radio that this one does. So it's got a female SMA connector up here as well. So those are the antennas that come with the radio. Here's a power off tour of the A3. So here's the radio itself. And so it's got a little green bezel on it, which is pretty cool. And as you maybe recognize if you've been in the market for these radios, this is a sister product to the Quansheng TK11. In fact, the CPS for the TK11 will work with this radio. So that's the basis of this. And so as you're exploring the radio, how to use it, some of those TK11 videos on YouTube are going to apply to this radio as well. So we have the speaker here, this microphone there, the screen is here, AB button to move up and down. This is a dual receive, not just dual watch. So there's 2 VFOs in here, which allows you to listen to 2 channels at the same time or listen to one while transmitting on the other. And so this is the VM button here for VFO versus the memory mode, and then the band button here, which you're going to use to change between the various bands. Now, one of the things that is different about this in terms of the numbers is that the numbers, of course, do number things. If you press this hashtag first, then you can use the numbers to type in frequencies and that kind of thing. But each of these have a function associated with them as well. And so the print's kind of small, but number 1 is squelch, balance on number 2, which will allow you to balance the audio coming from VFO1 or VFO2. And down here, you can set up the analyzer, the frequency band analyzer down here. You can change the modulation type here. It has several modulation types, AM, FM, upper and lower sideband, and so forth. And so those are all here, and they're on quick keys, as well as selecting the FM radio. And then across the middle here are the typical menu and exit buttons, along with the up and down arrow buttons here on the front. On this side, we've got 2 press to talks, and then we also have 2 programmable side keys. Those are programmable in the menus as well as in the CPS. Across the back here, then, here is the battery. Here's the slide for the belt clip that I showed you. Here is where you can plug in the USB-C cable from any USB-powered, 5-volt source. Plugs directly into the battery, and then there is your LED indicator, and then, of course, the charging tabs for your desktop charger. And then on this side, we've got a cover for the programming cable or for any of the other typical K1 style connectors, such as a wired speaker mic and so forth. And so those all fit right there. On the top, we've got the SMA male here for 2 of those antennas that I showed you. Here is a little rubber cover, and it kind of rotates. It doesn't really bend back, but it rotates around, and that's where you're going to plug in that T antenna, and then just slide this back around to seal it up. And then, of course, the on-off switch. And then behind this antenna is a little flashlight LED, so it does have a flashlight here on the top. So that's a quick power-off tour of the radio. Now, let's do a power on tour. So let's turn the A3 on here. So it announces that it's in channel mode and it's on channel 7. I've done some programming here so we have something to look at. The other thing you'll notice is that I have the backlighting off. My cameras don't pick this up very well, and so I've got the backlight off in hopes that you're able to see. The print is a little small, but I'll tell you that in the bright sunlight, this type of screen is easily visible. So this is a good outdoor radio, especially if you're in an area with lots of sunshine. So let's zoom in on this. And so we can see here we've got the information on the top, information on the bottom. These are a couple of repeaters that I have programmed in, and the channel number is there. And then across the top, there's other information. The battery is over here and so forth. Now, if I want to go into VFO mode, I'm going to press the VFO or memory mode, and you can see, I hope, over here that there's a little caret that says the top one is the one that's active right now. So now there we are in the frequency mode, and this is set to 21 megahertz, and so it's down in the HF band, and so we can change bands using this band button. Here's 32. Here's the AM air band. You can see here it changed to AM. Here's 2 meters. It's on high and so forth. These are the various bands that I showed you in that chart when we looked at the user guide. And then to go back to memory, we just slit the memory again, and then these buttons will allow us to move through the channels that we have programmed here, left and right. By pressing the AB button, we can move the caret to the lower one, and then we would be controlling that with these buttons. And then when we wanted to talk, we'd either use the upper or lower push to talk, depending on which one of these selections we wanted to use. Now, here was one of the other things that I mentioned, and that is these buttons have shortcuts to a variety of features. And I'm not going to dwell on them. I just pointed out to you, otherwise we'd be here all day because it's a very complicated radio. So number 2, we can press, and then now you can see it's a balance. And you can see here there's a little caret right here, and I can use the up and down buttons to set the balance of which is louder, the signal coming from the upper VFO or the lower VFO. So that's kind of handy. Down here is the spectrum analyzer. So we get exit out of this spectrum analyzer, and then you can see that the specifics are listed up here in very small print, and then it starts to display as it goes across there, and then it'll show a peak, where there's a frequency, and then you can use some of these buttons to make changes up here in the various elements that are identified here, so you can move through and see what we've got going on there. So you can see things have changed. We can change the decibels and some of the other things, and that's all described in some YouTube videos as well as in the owner's manual itself. Press of exit gets us out of that. And so channel 5 is the weather mode. Press that. You'll get into the weather channels. We'll press it here. We'll look for a frequency. You can see that it's receiving. The little green receive indicator is on. And so we've got all of these buttons here that have multiple purposes, to include the letters if you want to add letters in terms of names and titles and that kind of thing. So that's a quick look at the keyboard, which is the important part of this radio. Again, it's quite complicated and it's going to take a while to learn. Now, as we look here at the top, we've got that little space for that small antenna. And we'll grab that and we'll stick that in there. That little cover kind of gets in the way, so you want to make sure you got it pulled aside and fully seated there. And then we can go down here into the VFO mode and see if we can't get into something where we can hear what's going on. So here are the low frequencies going through. Here's the air band. I've had the air band set. This is a frequency for nearby. And so you can hear that. There's a little bit of fuzz in that, but I'm about 5 miles from the airport, so that's part of the reason. And we're just using these little antennas that are, on the radio itself, not an external antenna, and I'm in the house. So you can see that it comes in pretty well. We can continue to change our bands here. Now we're up in the 2 meter band, so we would be using this antenna here. So as we wrap up this Power On tour, let's take a look at the menus. And so the menus are subdivided, and so I hope you can see this. It says General. Into menu again, we'll move you to the bottom, and so it's Save. That's the power save mode. The brightness I've got off, as I mentioned. This next menu is Channel, which gives you the items you need to program a channel. The work mode, and this press menu again. So we've got the Vox and dual receive on or off, or timeout timer. Some of those overall radio settings are there, so we'll exit that. We'll go here into the VFO scan, which allows you to set up various scan options in the various bands that the radio covers. This is the memory scan, so it gives you a chance to set up some of those same options for the memory channels you have. Frequency scan, so this you can see here, it'll give you the timeout, decodes is normal, DCS modes. These are some of the more technical aspects of some of these things, so we'll get out of that. We go over here, then we've got DTMF submenu, which allows you to set up some DTMF signaling. And then we've got the 5-tone, which is part of DTMF. We've got the NOAA weather channels, and we can press this, and then you can set up some interesting elements in this menu. So you can set up the radio to receive various types of alerts, not every alert, but the ones that you want to hear, as well as where you are. So you can see my first choice here is the county I'm in here in Phoenix, Maricopa County. Here is my event list. It's currently empty, so it'll pick up any alert if I turn the alerts on. I can turn on scanning for the weather channels. There are 10 different ones that cover different parts of the country. I've got the squelch set for that. Here I've got the decode for the SAME, which is that alert stuff. And so when I go in here and I want to change it, if I change it to null, then I'm going to turn off all that special decoding. So I'm going to select that. And then if I back out of this and go to my weather channel by pressing number 5.
Today, sunny. Highs 99 to 104. East wind around 5 miles per hour.
So you can see with that NOAA frequency at 162 megahertz, the noise that we heard earlier is gone. And so that is the weather. So if you turn your weather on and you don't get any sound, then you need to go into that NOAA weather menu and make sure that you've got the decoding set correctly, because otherwise it'll only announce if it's triggered with that SAME type of alert. So be mindful of that. So that's a quick power on tour of the radio. I realize it was just a thumbnail sketch and there's a lot of complicated activities here that you can do, but it's a complicated radio, so you're going to have to spend a little bit of time and effort learning the various functions that this radio includes. Here's a look at the power output you can expect from the A3. So let's take a look at the power output here. I'm going into my MFJ 874 and into a dummy load out of that. So here's the FM signal in the 10 meter band, 10 meter on high power. So that's a little less than half a watt. So not much going out there, but in fact, it is going out. Now in 2 meters, the VHF call frequency on high power. We're on that 20 watt setting, so we're reading on the second arc from the bottom. And we've got about 7.6, 7.7 watts. That's pretty good. The VHF call, 446 on high and FM modulation. It's about 5.5 watts, not bad at all. And in the 6 meter call frequency, down at 50 megahertz, let's see what we get here on high again in the FM mode. And it looks to be about 0.9 or 1 watt. So in FM, on all of those advertised transmitting bands, it in fact does transmit. The lower bands are kind of low power, but pretty respectable in the traditional 2 meter and 70 centimeter bands. Now, let's check out the A3's signal purity. So let's take a look at the signal purity of the A3 here. I'm going to start down in the 50 megahertz or 6 meter area. This is the low end of where this thing transmits, and so I have the tiny SA set to measure harmonics. This horizontal line is that minus 16.02, which represents 25 microwatts, which is any harmonics that show up need to be below that. And I've got this set to the 6 meter calling frequency on high power. So let's take a look and see what we get. So it's picking up a number of harmonics, but they're all below that 16.02. But what's interesting is, so is the fundamental. It's at minus 21 dB, and so is the primary. So these are like 15 to 20 below the primary. They're supposed to be 40 below, but they are below that 25 microwatts. So here in FM with the 6 meter, not all that impressive. So now let's look at the 2 meter band. Again, the standards are the same for radios less than 25 watts. So we'll be using the lower press to test, as I've got it in the lower VFO here, again on high power at 146.52. Okay, so you can see in this one that the power output is higher. The fundamental is up here at about 0 with this 40 dB of attenuation, and the harmonics are below 25 microwatts. Harmonic number 3 here in the about 439 is right at the line, but a couple of them are below 40, a couple of them aren't. So technically a fail here on 2 meters in that they're not 40 dB below the fundamental. Before we look at the CPS, here's a quick audio sample from the A3.
Test, receive test. A3, receive test. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, test out. Transmit test for the A3, test, 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1, test out.
As promised, here's a quick snapshot of the Retevis A3 CPS. So here's a quick look at the A3 CPS from Retevis. It's pretty typical with a couple of differences from some of the other CPSs you may be used to looking at. First, the basic information and what it is you program is in this tree diagram as opposed to in drop-down menus. But across the top there are the typical icons for open and save and read and write. And of course you need to select the COM port that comes up in Device Manager for your programming cable. And so of course we can get our general settings with the device name and what you want to put in the various displays. You can customize that. You can select what you want the various programmable side keys to do. Here you can set up some NOAA SAME events, and you probably need to read more about that to understand what this is all about, but it's a very cool technology. We can match frequencies. The general stuff is here, like the backlight and the mic gain and timeout timer, all of that stuff is in here. Here in the channel tab is something I want to point out to you. It says it's VFO mode, and I've discovered this by mistake, but if you turn the VFO mode off here in this tab, the VFO turns off in the radio, which means that the V/M button will not work, nor will the band button. I struggled with that for a little bit before stumbling on the fact that I had inadvertently turned the VFO mode off here, and when I put it back on, then everything worked again. The channel is what I have here. You can see I put in a bunch of channels, and it's just a matter of adding frequency here. So if you wanted like the UHF call channel 446.000, when you click out of that, the rest of this all fills in, and then you can set, CTCSS stuff, all of these other highlighted things from the columns, give it a name, and then set the frequency for a repeater if it were a repeater channel. And then to get rid of it, it's just a matter of deleting it and it'll go away. You can do the same thing with scan lists. You can have a number of scan lists that you can customize. You can do some DTMF signaling. That's all here as well. 5-tone and 5-tone contacts. You can set up frequencies for local FM broadcast channels, so you can go through them with the up and down arrows from channel to channel as opposed to frequency in the VFO mode. We can have our NOAA decode addresses here. This is part of that same system, and so Maricopa County is identified as 004013, and a different county is a different address. That allows you to get the alerts for the area where you are. And then here we've got the events that you can add in as well. So that's a quick look at what we've got here in the CPS. There's a firmware update tool. We can go in here. Here's the update for firmware, give the program file and click update, that kind of thing. So all of this is pretty typical, and then we can read and write from the radio using this. And then here you can import and export a CSV file, which means you could do some programming in Chirp, export it, and then match the file format in terms of which item is in which column in your spreadsheet and do some importing. So that is a function that you don't always find in factory CPSs. So that's it, the A3 CPS from Retevis. Well, there you have it. What did you think? Be sure to leave a comment below. For me, the A3 is a nice change from the strictly dual-band HTs on the market. The extra features, including the extra band coverage, spectrum scope, and managing other variables, make this a good choice for those who really want to dive deeply into their radio. At the same time, its defaults will allow a newer ham to use the radio without all the customizations. As always, don't forget to click the thumbs up button and to subscribe to the Gadget Talk channel. I really appreciate it. Let me know your experience with the radio too. Join me over here for a video I think you'll like. Thanks for watching, and 73.